It was just another quiet morning in the suburban neighborhood of Fairview Ridge. Ethan Grayson, a 42-year-old former Marine turned federal investigator, stood in his kitchen, sipping his black coffee. The sun had barely risen, casting a golden hue over his neatly kept lawn. He enjoyed the solitude. No noisy neighbors, no HOA rules breathing down his neck, just peace. Then, a knock. Not a friendly tap, but 3 sharp, deliberate pounds against his front door. The kind that sent a chill down your spine. Ethan's grip on his mug tightened. His instincts kicked in. He moved to the peephole, careful not to cast a shadow. 2 men stood outside, dressed in matching navy blue polos embroidered with Fairview Homeowners Association and khaki pants. Badges clipped to their belts, too polished, too fake. One was tall, with slicked-back blonde hair and a forced confidence. The other, stockier, with a thick mustache and shifty eyes. "Home inspection! Open up!" the mustached one barked. Ethan's brow furrowed. Fairview Ridge didn't even have an HOA. His gut twisted. Something was off. These guys weren't inspectors. They were predators. And they had just knocked on the wrong damn door. Ethan Grayson didn't move. Years of training had taught him one thing: observe before engaging. Through the peephole, he studied the 2 men. The tall one, let's call him Slick, stood with his arms crossed, his mirrored sunglasses hiding any trace of emotion. But Ethan saw the stiffness in his stance. He wasn't relaxed. He was acting. The stocky one, Mustache, had his chest puffed out, his fingers flexing at his sides like he was daring someone to challenge him. Ethan's jaw clenched. This wasn't a routine scam. These guys weren't just playing pretend. They were looking for an easy target. From behind the door, he spoke, his voice steady but firm. "HOA? That's funny. We don't have one here." A pause. A flicker of hesitation. Then, Slick tilted his head toward Mustache as if waiting for him to respond. "Sir, this is a mandatory home inspection under community safety regulations," Mustache finally said, lowering his voice like it made him sound more authoritative. Ethan almost laughed. Safety regulations? What regulations? These guys were sloppy. If they had done their research, they'd know they were in the wrong place. But more than that, they'd know they were messing with the wrong person. Then, Mustache took it a step further. "Sir, you can either open the door now, or we'll be forced to enter by authority of the Fairview Security Division." That was it. The moment their scam turned into a crime. Ethan's fingers twitched toward the handle. Most people, scared, unsure, would have cracked the door open, asked questions. That's all these guys needed. 1 foot inside, 1 second of hesitation, and suddenly they're in control. But Ethan wasn't most people. He took a deep breath, keeping his voice level. "You got a warrant?" Silence. Slick's arms tightened over his chest. Mustache blinked, too many times in a row. They weren't expecting pushback. Then, a scoff. "Sir, under HOA bylaws." Ethan didn't let him finish. With one swift motion, he flipped the lock and swung the door open. The effect was immediate. The 2 men froze. For the first time, Ethan saw them clearly, and they saw him. Not a scared homeowner, not a clueless retiree, but a federal investigator with a badge in his hand and a gun on his hip. Slick's sunglasses couldn't hide the way his jaw tensed. Mustache swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. They had picked the wrong house. The air was thick, buzzing with unspoken tension. Ethan saw it, the flicker of panic in their eyes. They were calculating. Run? Fight? Talk their way out? Then, Mustache's fingers twitched toward his waistband. Ethan's muscles coiled. This was about to turn deadly. Ethan saw it before it happened. Mustache's fingers twitched toward his waistband, the smallest movement, barely noticeable to the untrained eye. But Ethan wasn't untrained. His body moved on instinct. Gun drawn, safety off, aimed dead center. Don't move. Ethan's voice was steel, cutting through the morning air like a blade. Mustache froze. His hand hovered inches from his belt, fingertips barely brushing the grip of a concealed handgun. A bad decision waiting to happen. Slick's hands flew up, palms out, his breath shaky. Whoa, let's all just... Drop it. Ethan didn't blink, didn't waver. His sights stayed locked on Mustache. I won't say it again. A second of silence, then chaos. Mustache exhaled sharply, and for a fraction of a second, Ethan saw the decision in his eyes. Fight or flight. But before Mustache could act, Ethan stepped forward, applying just enough pressure to tilt the scales. Now! A low growl of frustration escaped Mustache's throat, and with a reluctant curse, he let go of the gun. The weapon clattered onto the wooden porch. Ethan didn't lower his aim. Kick it away. Mustache hesitated. Wrong move. Ethan took another step closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Do it, or I'll assume you're reaching for it again. The weight of the words landed hard. Mustache swallowed, then slowly nudged the weapon away with his foot. The moment it was out of reach, Ethan acted. Holstering his gun in one swift motion, he reached behind his back. Metal clinked, the unmistakable sound of handcuffs. Slick and Mustache's eyes widened. Wait, this is a misunderstanding, Slick stammered, taking a cautious step back. Yeah? Tell that to the judge. Ethan moved fast. In a practiced, fluid motion, he had Mustache spun around, wrist locked in the first cuff before the guy even realized what was happening. Slick made a split-second decision. Run. Bad idea. The moment he turned, Ethan's foot swept his leg out from under him. Slick hit the ground hard, the breath whooshing from his lungs. Before he could scramble, Ethan had him pinned. You're done. Slick let out a strangled breath, face pressed against the porch. He knew it was over. Then, the sirens came. Flashing red and blue lights tore through the quiet street. Squad cars screeched to a stop. Uniformed officers spilling out with weapons drawn. In less than 2 minutes, both men were cuffed, their fake badges confiscated, their scam officially over. As an officer shoved Mustache into the back of a cruiser, the guy made one last, desperate attempt. We didn't mean any harm, the cop scoffed. Yeah? Tell that to the dozens of homeowners you robbed. Ethan crossed his arms, watching as they were driven away. He exhaled slowly. These guys thought they were predators. They had just met something worse. Ethan stood on his porch, arms crossed, watching the last of the patrol cars pull away. The two frauds were gone, but something about this whole setup felt bigger. A young officer, Detective Ryan Calloway, approached, still flipping through his notepad. Hell of a way to start your morning, huh? He muttered, glancing up at Ethan with an almost amused shake of his head. Ethan smirked. They're the ones who got unlucky. Ryan chuckled, but quickly sobered. You know, these guys aren't just some random con artists. We've been tracking a ring of scammers just like them, targeting homeowners, mostly elderly, single parents, people they think won't fight back. Ethan's jaw tightened. How many? Ryan sighed. We're looking at least 30 homes in the last 2 months, robbed blind, jewelry, cash, electronics. Sometimes they took everything but the damn furniture. Ethan's stomach twisted. 30 homes, 30 victims, and those were just the ones reported. Ryan flipped a page in his notepad. Here's the kicker. This isn't the first time someone pulled a gun on them. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Someone else fought back? Ryan nodded. Last week, an old man, Franklin Myers, retired Navy vet, caught 2 inspectors trying to force their way in. He had a shotgun. They ran before he could fire, but the cops barely investigated. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Why? Ryan sighed, lowering his voice. Some of the victims, they reported these guys to their real HOA offices. And you know what the HOA reps told them? Ethan already knew the answer. Nothing we can do. Ryan nodded. Bingo. Some of these associations are so obsessed with their own rules that they didn't even think to question if the inspectors were legit. They just assumed homeowners were being dramatic. Ethan shook his head, disgusted. So these guys got away with it because people trusted the system. Ryan tapped his pen against his notepad. Until today. Ethan exhaled, his mind racing. You said they weren't working alone? Ryan nodded grimly. That's what we're trying to figure out. We think these 2 are just foot soldiers. There's someone else pulling the strings. Someone higher up, organizing these break-ins. Ethan's fists clenched. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Ryan slipped a business card into Ethan's hand. If you remember anything else, call me. And be careful. If these guys have a boss, he won't be happy that you took down 2 of his guys. Ethan smirked, tucking the card into his pocket. Good. Let him come. Because now, Ethan wasn't just a random homeowner who got lucky. Now, he was hunting them. Ethan Grayson wasn't the type to let things slide. Not when innocent people had been preyed upon. Not when the system had failed them. And especially not when the men responsible still had someone pulling their strings. So, he started digging. That night, Ethan sat in his dimly lit office, laptop open, papers scattered across his desk. His fingers moved swiftly across the keyboard, cross-referencing police reports, surveillance footage, and neighborhood complaints. The more he looked, the worse it got. The scam wasn't random. It was calculated. The fake HOA inspectors didn't just pick houses at random. They targeted specific homeowners, retirees, single parents, people without security cameras, people who trusted authority enough not to question it. And it got worse. Ethan found at least 6 different suspects using the same scam, all over the state. Different faces, same uniforms, same con. This wasn't a 2-man operation. It was an organized crime ring. And someone at the top was calling the shots. A notification popped up on his screen. A new email from Detective Calloway. Got something for you. Check the attachment. Ethan opened the file. His breath hitched. Surveillance footage. It showed Mustache and Slick meeting with someone in a parking lot. A man in a dark suit, face partially hidden under a baseball cap. They exchanged something, an envelope. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Payment. Beneath the video file, Calloway had left a short message. We ran facial recognition. Names Victor Langley, ex-real estate developer, suspected in multiple fraud cases, never convicted. And get this, he used to run an HOA company. Ethan's pulse quickened. It made sense now. Langley wasn't just some con artist. He knew the system inside and out. He'd built an empire on exploiting homeowners, first legally, through shady HOA contracts, then illegally, by orchestrating a crew of fake inspectors to rob people blind. And now Ethan had a name, a face, a target. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Ethan answered. A deep voice, calm, calculated. Mr. Grayson, you've been asking a lot of questions. Ethan's grip on the phone tightened. And you are? A low chuckle. I think you already know. Victor Langley. Ethan leaned back in his chair, smirking. He had been expecting this. Langley continued, his voice smooth. Let me give you some advice. Walk away. You don't want to get involved in this. Ethan's jaw clenched. Wrong move. He chuckled. Langley, let me give you some advice. You knocked on the wrong door. A pause. Then, the line went dead. Ethan exhaled slowly. Now it was personal, and he wasn't walking away. He was coming for them. Ethan Grayson didn't scare easily. Threats didn't make him back down. They made him sharpen his knives. Langley's call confirmed what he already knew. He was onto something big. This wasn't just a simple scam. This was an organized crime syndicate using HOA authority as a front for home invasions and robberies. And Ethan was about to tear it down. The setup, over the next 48 hours, Ethan worked with Detective Calloway to build a case. They traced Langley's financial records, uncovering dozens of wire transfers to different inspectors across the state. The payments matched up with burglary reports. They found shell companies, fake business licenses, even emails where Langley instructed his men on how to intimidate homeowners. But they still needed one thing: proof of him orchestrating the next job. That's when Ethan had an idea. The sting operation Ethan called in a favor from an old friend, Jessica Monroe, an undercover FBI agent. Jessica posed as an elderly widow, living alone in a quiet neighborhood, exactly the kind of target Langley's men loved. She even put her house up for sale, knowing it would draw Langley's interest. Sure enough, within 24 hours, 2 new inspectors showed up at her door. Ethan, Calloway, and a full SWAT team watched from a surveillance van parked down the street. They had eyes and ears inside the house. The men knocked. Jessica played the part perfectly, nervous, hesitant, but ultimately trusting. She let them in. The moment they stepped inside, one of them pulled a stun gun from his belt, and that's when Ethan gave the signal. Go now. The takedown. The front door exploded inward as SWAT agents swarmed in, weapons drawn. The fake inspectors never saw it coming. One went for his gun, bad choice. Within seconds, he was pinned to the ground, a boot pressing into his spine. The second ran for the back door. Ethan was waiting. As the guy sprinted out, Ethan clotheslined him so hard he flipped midair before crashing into the lawn. The man groaned, dazed, handcuffs already clicking onto his wrists. But Ethan wasn't done yet. A second later, Langley's phone lit up. He had been watching the job through a hidden camera, waiting for his men to report success. Instead, he got Ethan Grayson's face staring straight into the lens. Ethan held up a police badge, smirked. Game over, Langley. Langley was out of time, and Ethan was about to finish this. Victor Langley was a ghost, a man who had built an empire on deception, always staying just out of reach of the law. Until now. Ethan wasn't going to let him slip away. The chase begins. As soon as the sting operation wrapped up, Calloway traced Langley's last known location, a private estate just outside the city. SWAT prepared for a raid, but Ethan had a gut feeling. Langley was already running. Sure enough, traffic cams caught a black SUV tearing down the highway, heading toward a private airstrip. He was trying to escape. "We need units at Blackwood Airfield now!" Ethan barked into his radio, jumping into his car and flooring the gas. The chase was on. High-speed pursuit. Langley's SUV weaved dangerously through traffic, pushing past slower cars. He was desperate, but Ethan wasn't about to let him win. As they neared the airfield, Ethan saw it, a private jet waiting on the tarmac, engines already roaring to life. Langley's last lifeline. Ethan gritted his teeth. Not today. At the last second, he swerved onto the emergency lane, gunning the accelerator. The SUV was just feet away from the plane. Then, bam! Ethan sideswiped Langley's vehicle, sending it spinning out of control. The SUV slammed into a guardrail, tires screeching. Langley stumbled out, face twisted in rage. But the moment he turned, Ethan was there, gun drawn, badge shining under the floodlights. End of the road. Hands where I can see them. Langley's jaw clenched. He had spent years outsmarting the law, manipulating the system. But now, he had nowhere left to run. Slowly, he raised his hands. Within seconds, Calloway and his team swarmed in, pinning Langley to the ground. It was over. Justice is served. 3 weeks later, Ethan sat in a federal courtroom as Langley faced the judge. Fraud, conspiracy, racketeering. The charges stacked higher and higher. Langley sat at the defense table, no expensive suit, no arrogant smirk, just a broken man staring at the wreckage of his empire. Then the judge spoke. For your crimes, you are sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. Silence. Langley's fingers tightened on the table, but there was no escape from this. Ethan exhaled, watching as the cuffs clicked into place. Justice had been served. A new beginning. As Ethan walked out of the courtroom, Calloway clapped him on the back. Hell of a case, Grayson. You took down an empire. Ethan smirked. They picked the wrong house. Langley thought he could use fear to control people, but he had forgotten one thing. Not everyone bows to fear. Victor Langley and his crew thrived on one simple fact. Most people don't question authority. They counted on homeowners being too intimidated, too trusting, or too unsure to fight back. But Ethan Grayson proved something important. Fear only works if you let it. The scam only succeeded because victims assumed these men had power. They wore uniforms, carried fake badges, spoke with confidence. That illusion was enough. But real power? Real power comes from awareness. Ethan saw through the lie because he questioned it. He noticed the details, the fake badges, the forced confidence, the inconsistencies. He trusted his instincts, and that saved him. If there's one lesson to take from this story, it's this. Never accept authority without verification. If someone knocks on your door claiming to be an inspector, a police officer, or anyone with power, ask for proof. Demand identification. Because in the real world, the biggest scams don't come from criminals in ski masks. They come from people pretending to be something they're not. Scammers like Langley are everywhere, using different tactics to exploit trust. Here's how to protect yourself. Verify before you comply. If someone claims to be from an official organization, call the company directly before letting them in your home. Trust your instincts. If something feels off, hesitation, fake badges, vague answers, listen to your gut. Don't be afraid to say no. Scammers rely on pressure tactics. You have the right to refuse entry to anyone without a warrant or proper credentials. Report suspicious activity. If you encounter a potential scam, report it immediately to local authorities. Your call could save someone else. Ethan's story was about one thing: turning fear into power. And if you remember that, you'll never be anyone's victim. If you found this story eye-opening, hit like and share to spread awareness. And if you've ever experienced a scam attempt, drop a comment below. Your story could help others stay safe.